Okay, hello, fellow scholars. Today I'm excited to share with you my counter storytelling in art lesson, social justice lesson. I've been doing this for about 3 weeks with my pre-AP Art 2 students. It's been really great. There's some stuff I would change about for next time, definitely, but overall, I think it was really successful. So I'm really excited to share it with you all today. If you look at you'll see that PowerPoint presentation. This is about the same format I actually share with my students. So the way you're seeing it is how my students have seen it, just a little bit of different information. Um, so like I said, this is for high school art. So the strands I used were for art level 2. And for the pre-AP level, I just kind of increased the requirements. We worked a little bit bigger, and I did give them free choice of medium. So they were able to use pencil, colored pencil, watercolor, paint. It was up to them. This was over a 3-week grading period, so after progress reports to report cards is when we worked on this, specifically from November 9th to December 3rd. So we just finished it up. This will be over 5 to 6 1.5 hour class periods, and my students are mostly virtual, so I have it divided every day into a synchronous lesson and then transitioning out into an asynchronous lesson. For my students who are in person, they do the asynchronous part with me for the remainder of class. So our topic is anti-racism, of course, but specifically focusing on the dehumanization of Mexican and Latinx immigrants. We're going to do it through interviewing and through portraiture. So my school is in Fort Worth ISD. We have 96% Hispanic students here. That's our demographic. We're low SES, and I have a lot of English language learners at this campus as well, particularly students who are new to the country. They go to a newcomers academy and they graduate out of that, and their next step is here to my campus. And after that, they get to be transitioned into high school with other students. So this focus of this lesson is focused on my kids specifically. So lots of objectives. My lesson grew and grew and grew. So it grew up into 3 weeks. So there were a lot of objectives I wanted them to learn, but I really focused it on these 6, which typically an objective I don't go over 3 objectives, but because this was so long, it was expanded. So main thing is counter narratives. I wanted them to know what a counter narrative was. We talked about microaggressions, a few little buzzwords there. I wanted them to know that counter narrative telling can bring about social change. I wanted them to visually explore ideas of self identity through their culture and through their community. The main one, though, is I can successfully interview my subject by asking engaging questions relevant to their race and ethnicity in hopes of bringing about social change. That was the main one we focused on. And then, of course, for our technical drawing skills, I can create a portrait using proper proportions that show the likeness, personality, culture, and mood of my subject. We also, at the very end, identified race and culture and how they're portrayed by local artists in local art institutions. We're in Fort Worth, so we have a lot of rich cultural sites around us that we can take advantage of, but we also criticize them a little. Paramatiques, like I said, I'm using the Art 2 high school strand. I try to use one of each. However, this one I didn't focus on strand 3. I focused on 1, 2, and 4. So students will analyze their own community by choosing a specific individual to interview and use as the subject for a portrait drawing. So this is a family member, this is a teacher, this could be someone in their community that they want to interview that they think would have a counter narrative. They want to interview their life and see how can they bring about social change. We'll talk about how other artists do this so they can get ideas first. A big focus of mine was seeing how can the Chicano movement align with the Black Lives Matter movement. rather than seeing these two movements as separate polarizing groups, I wanted them to see intersections between the two and how can we be allies and advocates for each other. Students will analyze and interpret works of local artists to begin their own artistic investigation in their community to give personal meaning to the work. They will practice, experiment, and revise by utilizing varied portrait and photography techniques. So, if any of you teach AP art, the three college board buzzwords are practice, experimentation, and revision. They want to see those three things in portfolio reviews. So, this is why I have these explicitly written here, and I have portraiture and photography so they can see difference in media. And then, of course, talking about what it means to be an American. So, week one, like I said, we're going to go over this with 3 weeks, so a couple days in each week, usually about two. We'll have a third day. If they come in on a Friday, I'll usually use that as an extra working day for them. So week one, we're going to understand concepts, we're going to do some photography practice, and we're going to do some portrait exercises. So I usually have different hooks. So day one, the hook is me playing this music video, Miraza. That's the song. And then day two, we're going to look at a quote from Donald Trump. And then throughout the lesson, every day we'll kind of go back and forth. So one day I'll do music video, and then the next day I'll do some kind of quote, and then music video, and then a quote, and then kind of go back and forth. I like to change it up, but I also like to keep a format so that it's structured for them, because a lot of my students are 100% asynchronous and they view my videos to work, and so it helps to have a pattern with them. And then from there, I'll introduce the lesson outline. So here is a music video that I would have them look at. This is a Black Latinx artist, so Afro Latinx is what we see a lot of, and he raps about um, different ideas starting with slavery, and he goes on from there. So it's all in Spanish, and so a lot of my kids liked this music video as well.
Llevo bajo mi piel sangre que cruzó mares para ser esclavo en la mano de aquel que clavó un puñal sobre su opresor. La valentía de quien batalló contra un tirano, la frialdad de Maceo frente a un fusil español, la oratoria de Malcolm X, Martin Luther King.
So he talks about a lot of our vocabulary words that I'm about to go over with my students. In retrospect, I would have liked to show this music video after, especially when he uses the word oppressor, because that's our new vocab word we are learning. So I probably would have flip-flopped the two. From there, though, we talked about what is counter storytelling. I explained what it is. I give them some examples of counter storytelling. How it can challenge the status quo. When we talk about a microaggression we've witnessed or experienced, and then also incidents larger than microaggressions, telling stories. So after I talk about counter storytelling and introduce the topic, giving them a hook, I throw them this KWL chart and I ask them, what is it that you know about immigration? What would you like to know more of? And then what have you learned going back and reflecting? So here's one student's example. They know that immigration is a problem, which I thought was an interesting choice of words for my student. They want to be more informed, and then they learned that artists are trying to be political and send a message, which was wonderful. This student says they knew about race and privilege between color and male versus female. They want to know why the world has come to this. A little dramatic, but I love it. And then they learned what counter storytelling really means. So here's our vocabulary that I would have them copy down. I normally don't have them copy vocabulary. We kind of go over it together, and I have them do something called sketchnoting, where rather than writing the definition for oppression, I had them draw a quick doodle about what oppression looks like. For this one, I had them copy down the definition all the way instead of doing sketch notes. Had I had a little bit more time, I probably would have incorporated sketchnoting as well. So the conclusion for this is to draw a portrait of yourself. So they had two things they needed to do for asynchronous time. One was cut and glue from magazines, eyes, nose, mouths, and draw them out realistically. And then another one is using this formatting for the face, the mapping of the face, to draw a portrait of themselves. This was their asynchronous work to use for next class. So for day two, I gave them this quote from Donald Trump as their hook. And after reading it, it's a quote, it's a little negatively associated with Mexicans. It's from the Washington Post. I had them, if they wanted to explore and expand on this, they could read the article, but I did not require it. However, after they read the article, I had them silently write down on top of their portrait from their asynchronous time a reflection. So here's my teacher example of things that they can do. You guys have seen this before in another one of our lessons, this portrait. I used this, and I did like the idea of using different color associations as well, so I threw that out there for them to do also. So I've introduced our first artist named Eric Almanza. His artwork articulates the synthesis between his environment and his culture, crafted through the lens of a Chicano. So he often depicts the disenfranchised themes of immigration reform and social justice. So this piece was very powerful, very, very realistic portrait artist focusing on anti-Mexican sentiments. So what I do is I start the first group work assignment. So I have students describe, analyze, interpret, and judge his work in groups. So Google Breakout sessions is something that we use, or my students in class have table groups. Currently, I have big plastic things dividing them, but it still works. They still talk to each other. And then I had them independently read his artist statement, and then we had a class reflection on that. So we talk about his work. What did each of you get in your group? Normally, I have them pick a group leader to share with the class, and we take notes on what the group leaders say. So here's the conclusion for the lesson. After we talk about Eric Almanza, I have them take photos with their iPhones of somebody. So by now, they should have picked who they want to interview. And they're going to take 20 to 30 photos of them and then upload their 3 best to Google Classroom by watching this video.
Hey, this video is going to be some quick and easy tips that you can use to start taking better portraits with your phone. Or
Now, a lot of my students don't have phones. They don't have fancy iPhones to take pictures with, but we are one-to-one. They have Chromebooks, and so I allowed them just to take photos with their Chromebook or with the little webcam function. And it would work just as fine. We talked through it. So this goes into week 2, where we're going to continue to explore artists. We're going to do more portrait exercises, and we're going to interview and practice interviewing. So on day 3, we talked about the artist Carmen Lomas Garza, and she focuses on positivity. So she grew up in the Chicano movement of the late 1960s with all the anti-Mexican sentiment of that time. And her counter storytelling is showing people the bright, beautiful colors, the family gatherings, the traditions, and then visions of just everyday life. And my students really were drawn to this. And I found that in their artwork that they gave me, this was where they headed. They wanted to use the bright colors. They wanted to focus on positive things. A lot of them didn't tell me about the struggles their families had, but they focused more on the positive parts of their culture. So that's where Carmen Lomas Garza came in. So we did the same group work. They described, analyzed, interpreted, and judged her work in the groups, Google groups or table groups. They read their artist statement independently, and then this is where we talked about the Chicano movement a little bit more and connected it with the Black Lives Matter movement. Down here, you'll see a YouTube video about the Chicano movement and from the story of Austin. So they liked that one a lot. It was a good lesson. So to conclude this, I said, guys, it's time now. You have your photo of your person. You took 3, pick one, and I'm going to have you start on your portrait project. And so I walked them through this tutorial video on how to do portraits. This is particularly about self-portraits, but it's the same mapping ideas. So I had them watch this video that I made. This was made during COVID. So a great video though. Moving on.
Hey, dude.
So, but we don't need to watch that. Okay, so on day 4, this kind of concludes up the week. We talked about Juan Velasquez. He's a muralist, painter, and community advocate right here in our Fort Worth community. So there's a lot of his murals around the place, and a lot of my students didn't realize who the artist was. So it was nice having them make connections, because we have a food mart here down the street, and they're like, "Oh, that's the artist." So it was really cool to see them make that connection. Um, with him. He currently, well, he it just passed. He had an exhibit here at the Artes de la Rosa, which is in the Fort Worth Stockyards, which is within walking distance of my high school. So we got really lucky, and I had a few students go out to go see his exhibit, which was great. With his mural, he has quite a few about Vanessa Guillen. So I had the students get into groups when we did the same thing where we described, analyzed, interpreted, and judged his work. But we also spent quite a few minutes talking about Vanessa Guillen. What does it mean to be a woman? What does it mean to be a Mexican woman in the Army today? And how are women treated? We talked about the I Am Vanessa Guillen movement. We talked a little bit about the Me Too movement. And of course, we talked about her case and the tragedy that had happened to her. We asked questions about if she was a man, would this have happened? We asked questions about if she was a white woman, would this have happened? Or would it have been handled differently? This Immortal Soldiers mural is right next to our high school, like right around the corner. I could probably stick my head out the window and see it. So it was cool making that connection with them too. So he has a lot of work having to do with soldiers. Juan Velasquez is also a soldier himself. So conclusion for this day is a little bit all over the place depending on where they are at. So everybody needs to develop interview questions to ask before they leave for the day. They got into partners to practice their interview questions, and then they have to submit 5 questions for me to review. This kind of transitions into Thanksgiving break. So over Thanksgiving break, their expectation is to keep on working on their portrait, work on completing their portrait, and record their interview. Now, for privacy's sake, I did not have them share their interviews with each other, but they did share their portraits with each other. And this is a video. I didn't require them to watch it, but it gives you good tips about interview success. I'm gonna move on. So for week 3, this is our break for Thanksgiving. Was in between this, so they had all break to work on their portrait. They had all break to interview their individual, and when they came back, they're uploading it to Flipgrid. So the day they came back from Thanksgiving, they were supposed to upload a picture like this to me. Almost done, working on shading, blocking in areas, and then they had a few days when they came back to finish it up and then upload their interview and present it with the class on Flipgrid. So Artes de la Rosa is a cultural center in the Stockyards. This is the only lesson we had when they came back from Thanksgiving. Is we talked about what it was, talked about where it was. It's a independently owned art gallery in Fort Worth in the Stockyards that has a theater. They have live performances, and they have an art gallery space, and it's free to students, which they didn't know about this place. They didn't know it was right here within walking distance. So I gave them an extra credit assignment to go to see Juan Velasquez's art exhibit. And then lesson conclusion and transition to asynchronous. This is actually the lesson conclusion. They upload their audio and video interview to Google Classroom to privately be seen by me. They turn in their final portrait to Google Classroom, and then they present their work on Flipgrid. And then they have to comment on 2 classmates. So here's what they would see. Hey guys, so this Flipgrid video is the same as always, except you are presenting your portrait this time. You can hold it up or you can put it up on your camera just like I have right here. So remember to answer all the questions, make eye contact with your camera, don't look. So I usually give them a little bit of reminders for Flipgrid. So they make a video just like this one that I made. They post it, they put a picture of their artwork up next to them, just like my Frida Kahlo picture I have up, and they talk about their work. And then they have to go and comment on 2 classmates. If they make just the video, they get a 70. If they comment on 2 classmates, it's a 100. And that concludes our lesson. Hey guys, so this Flipgrid video is the same. Here's some examples, exemplary examples of my students who did complete it. I have everything from sophomores all the way to seniors. So you're seeing different levels here, even though they're all in the same pre-AP class. So students picked family members mostly, or they picked themselves. They put little ideas about their culture in it that they did explain in their Flipgrid videos and through a written self-expression. So I thought they did a fantastic job. We had a lot of fun with this artwork. My students got to explore and learn a little bit about their families more. They learned a little bit about their community more. I will say that I don't have a lot of class participation. I have students who log in with their cameras off. They don't participate in the chat. They don't really ask a lot of questions, which has been an ongoing issue on our campus since COVID started. But as soon as I started in on this lesson, I had more attendance, I had more participation, and I had higher grades. So this social justice theme seems like something hard to do with your students, but it was really worth it because they are so inquisitive about it. They're so curious about it, and they do really want to learn more. So I was really happy with the way that this lesson went. I do have a little bit of reflections on it. I wanted to know how have other students who do not fit this demographic been left out, and how do I be more inclusive? I do have a few white students. I have a few black students, and I'm hoping that I was able to connect with them as strongly as I was with my Hispanic students. Confidentiality was an issue for me and for my students, especially if there was legality involved. So I want to be able to present their work publicly going forward in a more public setting, but I also want to make sure that I keep some of them anonymous. So navigating through that will be an ongoing issue for me. Um, and how to navigate through issues of just race and white privilege. It's such a trigger for some people, and I just want to make sure all students feel safe and welcome. This will always be something ongoing in the back of my head. So if anybody has some ideas for how to deal with that, I'd appreciate it. But overall, it was a great lesson. I hope you guys got some cool ideas from it, and I look forward to hearing from you and reading your comments. Good luck, and I hope I see some of you guys next semester.